Let me ask you something tender. Have you ever sat across from the person you've shared a lifetime with and still felt alone? Not because they've stopped loving you, not because there was an argument, but because somewhere between paying bills and raising children, between doctor's appointments and grocery lists, the closeness began to fade. That was exactly how Marjorie felt one quiet Tuesday morning. She was 68, a retired schoolteacher, and had been married to Richard for over 42 years. Their home was calm, stable, and full of memories, framed photos on the wall, the familiar scent of morning coffee, and their old couch with just the right curve from years of sitting side by side. But lately, that closeness, the laughter, the warmth, the shared secrets, had turned into silence. Not angry silence, not wounded silence, just stillness. They still talked about what to eat, who to call, when to take medications, but they no longer spoke. Not about their dreams, not about what made them feel alive, not even about what made them afraid. And that's what made it all so hard. Because when love becomes quiet, not from peace, but from disconnection, it doesn't scream, it doesn't crash, it drifts, like a boat unanchored, slowly pulled by the current until one day, you look up, and the shore is no longer in sight. Marjorie didn't want to drift anymore. That's when she remembered something her mother once told her. Love doesn't die with time. It withers when left untouched. And so she lit a candle that night, not for light, but for intention. She turned toward Richard, held his hand a little longer, and asked softly, "When was the last time we talked about something that made us feel alive?" It wasn't magic. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start, because the first step to healing silence is recognizing it. So, if you've ever felt that same quiet drift, stay with me, because in the next chapter, we'll uncover what truly happens to love and connection as we age, and why it's not the end of intimacy, but the beginning of a deeper understanding. Let's talk about why love changes, and how that change might just be the key to bringing it back to life. When Marjorie sat with Richard on that quiet evening, something unexpected happened. After she reached for his hand, Richard didn't pull away, but he didn't know what to say either. He simply stared at their joined hands for a moment, then whispered, "It's been a long time since we talked like this." Not long after, over cups of chamomile tea, they talked about the early days, about the silly road trips with broken radios, the surprise dances in the kitchen, the way just one look used to make them feel seen. And then Marjorie said something that caught them both off guard. "I think I believed love was like a rock, once found, it just stays." Richard looked at her, eyes soft. "But rocks don't move." Exactly. That's the quiet truth many couples miss. Love isn't a rock. It's a river. It flows. It bends. It carves new paths over time. In the beginning, love is a rush, new, exciting, full of spark. But after decades, love becomes quieter, more about presence than passion, more about safety than surprise. And that's okay. In fact, it's beautiful, but only if you learn how to meet it where it is now. You see, the couples who thrive into their 70s, 80s, and beyond, they don't chase the thrill. They learn to love the rhythm of the river. They touch each other with the same hands that once held newborns. They speak with voices softened by loss, shaped by laughter. And they understand that intimacy isn't about returning to who you were. It's about honoring who you are now. So here's a small but powerful lesson. Don't try to reclaim the past. Reimagine the present. Create intimacy not by going backward, but by flowing forward together. In the next chapter, we'll uncover the truth that many couples don't talk about. How emotional connection must come before physical intimacy, especially in this stage of life. And why, for women especially, the heart must be touched long before the body ever is. Let's keep going. When Sophia sat across from Grandma Amalia, the fire crackled gently between them. "I still want to feel close," Sophia whispered. "But something's missing. We're distant." Grandma Amalia smiled softly, stirring her tea. "Most people think intimacy begins in the body," she said. "But for a woman, especially after 50, it begins much earlier in the heart." And this is where so many couples get it backwards. They think reigniting love means scheduling a date night or trying something new in the bedroom. But for women, true intimacy is not physical at first, it's emotional. It's not about the act, it's about the atmosphere. Think of it like preparing a garden. You can't plant seeds on hardened soil. You have to soften it first, with warmth, attention, listening. For example, remember Carol and Henry? Married for 42 years, they loved each other deeply. But after retirement, Henry started pulling away. Not intentionally, but distracted. His days were quiet. He read, fixed things around the house, but barely spoke beyond routine. Carol felt invisible. Not unloved, just unseen. One day, instead of trying to reignite romance with a gesture, Carol simply said, "I miss talking to you." That night, they sat without phones, without TV, just talked. And by the end of it, Henry reached for her hand like he used to. That was the spark. Because for a woman, feeling desired starts with feeling understood, noticed, listened to. She needs to feel emotionally safe before she can feel physically open. Here's the truth. A deep conversation is often more seductive than a grand romantic gesture, and a kind word, sometimes more powerful than touch. So if the passion feels distant, don't start with the bedroom. Start with her heart. In the next part, we'll explore a surprising truth about what kills desire in long-term love, and how to break free from routines that silently erode connection. Because desire doesn't die, it just gets buried. Let's uncover how to bring it back. By the third day of her visit, Sophia sat with Grandma Amalia in the garden under a grapevine trellis. A soft breeze rustled the leaves, and the scent of rosemary floated in the air. "I keep asking myself," Sophia confessed, "how did we get here? We used to laugh so easily, touch without thinking." Amalia nodded knowingly. That's the trouble with love left on autopilot. We confuse routine for ritual. And routine, she said gently, is where desire goes to sleep. Let's pause here. There's a difference between habit and intention. Most long-term couples fall into rhythms. Morning coffee, dinner at 6, conversations about bills and groceries. It's comforting. It's stable. But desire isn't born from comfort. It's born from curiosity. The moment intimacy becomes predictable, it stops being exciting. Let's look at two couples. Ron and Linda still share breakfast each morning, but they do it silently. No eye contact, no shared stories, just coffee, toast, and scrolling through separate phones. It's a routine. Bill and Ann, married 38 years, also have breakfast together. But once a week, they light a candle, even if it's just cereal. They ask each other one question they've never asked before. It's not elaborate, but it's intentional. That's a ritual. Rituals nourish intimacy. Routines numb it. So what can you do? Take a walk together, but hold hands. Make dinner, but set the table like it's a special night. Leave a note, not about chores, but something you admire. Because desire thrives in the little surprises, the pauses where love is remembered, not assumed. Here's a simple truth. Passion fades when we stop choosing each other, and we stop choosing when we stop seeing. So, if you want to reignite connection, don't break the routine. Transform it into a ritual. Coming up next, we'll uncover one of the biggest blind spots in long-term love, what men often miss about emotional intimacy, and how one simple shift can change everything. That evening, as the fire crackled low and shadows danced along the cottage walls, Grandma Amalia asked Sophia a question that stopped her mid-sip of tea. "When was the last time your husband made you feel seen?" Sophia looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm not sure. He loves me, I know that. But it's like he's with me, without truly being with me." Amalia leaned forward. That's what many men don't understand. They think love is proven by presence, by staying. But a woman doesn't need someone just in the room. She needs someone in the moment. This is one of the biggest blind spots in long-term love. Many men assume emotional connection just happens by default. But for a woman, especially as she ages, intimacy begins in the mind and in the heart. Here's a truth that often goes unspoken. If a woman doesn't feel emotionally safe, she'll slowly begin to close off physically. Not out of spite, but out of self-protection. Let's look at an example. Mike, in his 60s, often tells his wife that he loves her, but only in passing. He rarely looks up from his paper. He assumes she knows how he feels. Tom, also in his 60s, says fewer words, but when he does, he looks into his wife's eyes. He listens fully, not just to the words, but the emotions beneath them. He touches her back gently as he passes by, and she melts. What Tom understands, and Mike doesn't, is this. For a woman, intimacy is not a destination. It's a response. So what's the shift? Replace autopilot questions with real ones. What's something you've been thinking about lately? Instead of how was your day? Notice the unspoken, her mood, her silences, her glances. Give more than solutions. Give presence. Because before a woman's body will open, her heart must feel held. And when that happens, when she feels emotionally connected, truly understood, that's when passion returns, not as duty, but as desire. In the next part, we'll explore how small, spontaneous gestures, done with heart, can do more for your relationship than any grand romantic plan ever could. Grandma Amalia smiled softly, watching Sophia absorb the truth about emotional connection. Then she said something that made Sophia blink in surprise. Do you know the most romantic thing your husband ever did for you? Sophia tilted her head. Our anniversary trip to the coast. Amalia shook her head gently. No, child. It was the day he brought you tea when you were sick, sat beside you quietly, and brushed the hair from your face without saying a word. You didn't remember it because it was grand. You remembered it because it was real. That's the secret. It's not the grand vacations or expensive gifts that sustain love. It's the small, everyday acts, done from the heart, that keep intimacy alive. Especially after 60, when life slows down, these little sparks become more powerful than ever. A compliment whispered in the kitchen. A hand reached across the table. A laugh shared over memory. Sophia thought back to her husband. He used to leave notes in her coat pocket, sing softly when they danced in the living room. Where had that man gone? No, where had that part of them gone? The truth is, life gets full. We forget that love needs tending. But just like a garden, it doesn't ask for big, dramatic floods, just steady, gentle watering. So here's the invitation. Bring her coffee before she asks. Send her a photo of the place you first kissed. Tell her why she still takes your breath away. Because what touches a woman's heart isn't what you buy, it's what you notice. And the best part, you don't need to go back in time to bring back the romance. You just need to bring back the attention. In the next part, we'll look at a powerful truth that many couples forget. Love doesn't survive routine. It survives renewal. It was late afternoon when Grandma Amalia reached for an old wooden box on a nearby shelf. She opened it, revealing small keepsakes, photos, dried flowers, a faded ribbon. Do you know what these are? She asked. Sophia leaned closer. Memories. Amalia nodded. Yes, but not just memories. Moments when love was alive, spontaneous, intentional. Most couples lose their way not because they stop loving, but because they stop remembering how to love with intention. It struck Sophia hard. She had been showing up in her marriage, but had she been fully present? You see, over time, relationships tend to drift into default mode. Wake up, chores, errands, TV, sleep. It's not bad, it's just neutral. But love doesn't thrive in neutral. And here's the mistake many people make. They think reigniting intimacy requires a dramatic overhaul, a second honeymoon, counseling, candlelit dinners every night. But Grandma Amalia had a different wisdom. You don't need to force fireworks, she said gently. You just need to change the rhythm. Start small. Switch up your routine. Go for a walk instead of watching TV. Share something personal, your fears, your hopes, a secret joy. Revisit a place you both love, your first coffee shop, a quiet bench in the park. It's not about being someone else. It's about becoming present again with the same person in a new way. Sophia smiled through misty eyes. She suddenly understood. Renewal isn't a one-time act. It's a choice, a quiet one, repeated daily. And so, if you've been feeling like passion has cooled or connection has faded, don't panic. You don't need to start over. You just need to start again. In the next part, we'll explore the unspoken side of aging intimacy and the beautiful power of understanding how love shifts, especially after 60. That evening, as the fire in Grandma Amelia's hearth began to dim into soft, glowing embers, she leaned back in her chair and looked at Sophia with a gentle seriousness. "My dear," she began, "there's something couples often don't talk about, but it shapes everything as we grow older. Intimacy changes, not just how we express it, but how we experience it." Sophia nodded slowly, the silence between them filled with unspoken understanding. "You see, after 60, intimacy no longer lives only in touch. It lives in gestures, in presence, in patience. It becomes less about urgency and more about depth, less about physical rhythm and more about emotional resonance. For many women especially, intimacy is tied deeply to how safe, cherished, and emotionally understood they feel. And for men too, it becomes less about performance and more about connection. But here's the silent tragedy. Too many couples misunderstand these shifts. They assume that fading desire means fading love. That changes in the bedroom means something is broken. But Grandma Amalia saw it differently. "It's not broken," she said softly. "It's evolving." She told Sophia stories of couples who, in their 70s and 80s, found a renewed intimacy, one rooted not in youth, but in presence, a gentle massage before bed, a warm hand held in silence, a shared story that made them laugh until tears came. They didn't need to rush. They simply needed to stay curious, to ask, "What makes you feel loved today?" Because when hearts stay open to listening, even aging bodies can still feel the warmth of desire. And as Sophia closed her eyes that night, she didn't feel older. She felt wiser, because she finally understood. The most powerful kind of intimacy is the kind that grows with you. The next morning, as soft sunlight filtered through the cottage window, Grandma Amalia handed Sophia a small mirror. "Look into it," she said. Sophia hesitated, then gazed into her reflection. She saw the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the silver strands in her hair. But Amelia's voice broke the silence gently. "What do you see?" Sophia smiled faintly. "Someone older, someone tired, but still here." Amalia nodded. "And what if I told you, you're still the leading lady of your life, not just a supporting role in someone else's?" It was a truth too many women forget. As the years go by, society becomes quieter about a woman's beauty. The compliments fade, the stares soften, and for many, a question begins to creep in silently. Am I still desirable? The answer is yes. Always yes. But here's the catch. The feeling of being desired isn't about waiting for someone else to tell you. You create it through how you carry yourself, how you speak to yourself, and how you let others treat you. Sophia asked, "But how do I help my husband see me that way again?" Grandma Amalia smiled. "You don't wait to be adored. You remind him how radiant you are, not with makeup or a new dress, but with your presence, your laughter, your touch, your confidence. Because when a woman reclaims her worth, when she walks into a room believing she's beautiful, others can't help but believe it too. So, if you've ever felt invisible in your own relationship, start by seeing yourself again. Speak gently to the woman in the mirror. Then show the world she's still the one, the leading lady, always." In the next chapter, we'll explore how this kind of self-belief transforms not just love, but life itself. Later that evening, as the fire crackled low and the stars quietly blanketed the sky outside the cottage, Sophia looked at Grandma Amalia and whispered, "Do you think it's too late for us to fall in love again with each other?" Amalia shook her head with a soft smile. "My dear, it's never too late. But you have to stop waiting for love to feel like it did at the beginning. That was just the prologue. What you're writing now, this is the real story. And that story doesn't need candlelit dinners or grand romantic gestures, though those never hurt. It needs something more enduring, presence, intention, and curiosity. Too many couples believe that intimacy fades with time. But what actually fades is the willingness to keep discovering each other, to keep asking questions, to listen like it's the first time, to touch not out of routine, but out of choice. Love after 60, Amalia said, is not about fixing what's broken. It's about choosing again and again to stay curious about the person beside you, to meet them anew each day." Sophia sat quietly, her heart swelling with something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, not the hopeful kind from fairy tales, but the grounded kind that grows from wisdom and work. So, if you're watching this and wondering whether your relationship still has more chapters left, the answer is yes. But those pages won't write themselves. You have to reach for your partner's hand again, not out of habit, out of wonder. You have to speak, not to be heard, but to understand. You have to fall in love, not with who they were, but with who they're becoming, right alongside you. Because love that lasts isn't the kind that avoids change. It's the kind that grows with it. And your next chapter? It starts tonight. Later that evening, as the fire crackled low and the stars quietly blanketed the sky outside the cottage, Sophia looked at Grandma Amalia. If you've made it this far, I believe you weren't just listening to a story. You were quietly reflecting on your own. Here's the truth. Love doesn't fade with age. It simply changes shape. From those early, rushed handholds to the quiet comfort of a glance across the dinner table. From surprise gifts to the simple presence of someone who shows up every single day. And the most beautiful part? You can begin again at 60, at 70, or beyond. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to turn toward the person you've spent years beside, with fresh eyes, a softened heart, and a bit of wonder, like when it all began. Personally, I believe love never really runs out. It just gets quieter when we stop feeding it. But if something in this story touched you today, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment below. I still choose to love the one who's walked beside me all this time. Or share a piece of your heart. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If this video spoke to you, give it a thumbs up to help others find it. And don't forget to subscribe, because we've got so many more meaningful stories coming your way, all created with you in mind. Because no matter your age, you still deserve a love that is warm, intentional, and deeply felt. ND whispered, "Do you think it's too late for us to fall in love again with each other?" Amalia shook her head with a soft smile. "My dear, it's never too late. But you have to stop waiting for love to feel like it did at the beginning. That was just the prologue. What you're writing now, this is the real story. And that story doesn't need candlelit dinners or grand romantic gestures, though those never hurt. It needs something more enduring: presence, intention, and curiosity. Too many couples believe that intimacy fades with time. But what actually fades is the willingness to keep discovering each other, to keep asking questions, to listen like it's the first time, to touch not out of routine, but out of choice. Love after 60, Amalia said, is not about fixing what's broken. It's about choosing, again and again, to stay curious about the person beside you, to meet them anew each day. Sophia sat quietly, her heart swelling with something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, not the hopeful kind from fairy tales, but the grounded kind that grows from wisdom and work. So, if you're watching this and wondering whether your relationship still has more chapters left, the answer is yes. But those pages won't write themselves. You have to reach for your partner's hand again, not out of habit, out of wonder. You have to speak, not to be heard, but to understand. You have to fall in love, not with who they were, but with who they're becoming, right alongside you. Because love that lasts isn't the kind that avoids change. It's the kind that grows with it. And your next chapter? It starts tonight.